Hello everyone, it's Tana. Welcome back to the Rabbit Hole Designs YouTube channel. Today we are using Rubber Ducky Fishing and we're making 3 cards with him. So he is from the latest release and I think he makes a pretty good Father's Day card, so we'll get to that. But the very first card that I'm working on is a very clean and simple card. So I'm using this pale cornflower blue colored cardstock. I believe it's a card panel from Simon Says Stamp, and I cut a circle out of it. And now I taped that panel to the top of my Misty rather than trying to bend and conform my sentiment stamp to go all around the edge of that circle. I'm using the outside of the window, or using the Misty door and the panel on the outside to see where that stamp should be bent. And it turned out pretty good. So I did end up taking like one word off of the sentiment and doing that separately all the way around so that I would have an easier time bending it to shape. Now I'm going to use that same panel that I cut the circle out of, and I'm going to glue that to a white A2 card base, and then I'm going to glue another white card panel on top of that. So the blue one is cut a 1/16 of an inch smaller than the card base, and the white one's cut I think about an 1/8 of an inch smaller than the white card base. And then I'm going to use my alignment grid from Simon Says Stamp to make sure I get my sentiment correct. So we're going to put the same sentiment down underneath the circle. And all my ducks were pre-colored for today's video, so there's no coloring in today's video. There is some ink blending though. So there's our sentiment there, just in black ink. And then I'm going to make sure I adhere the entire circle to the card base right up above that sentiment. And of course the ducky was already glued to the circle. Moving on to the second card. So I'm taking this Hippo Botanical. I believe it was released last year. If it's still available in the shop, I'll link it down below for you guys. I really just needed the lily pads. So I'm going to stamp those out along the bottom of my Slimline card panel. And I'm going to mask them off because we're going to do some ink blending. So I'm taking a piece of snot tape here. Now you used to be able to find snot tape on Amazon. If I can find it, I'll put it below, but I've been having a hard time finding it lately. So I'm using my Catherine Puller inks. I'm starting off with Wintergreen, and you can see I was not very worried about blending it into the cardstock because we're going to add more colors. Next I did Seafoam. Then I added some Sea Glass. And then after the Sea Glass, we are going to kind of create waves. So I cut it out of masking paper here, and I'm using the Bay Breeze, and I'm creating waves along that pond. Sorry for the traffic. It's really nice today. I have my windows open, but unfortunately that means you can hear the traffic as I live on a major state highway. And we have a pretty huge front lawn, but you can still hear the traffic. So there's our pond. Now we're going to reveal under our masks. It's always fun. But like I said, no coloring. So ta-da, they're all done. I used Cumberbund and I believe Fiesta Blue for the sky. I figured I'd save you guys the trouble of that. And because I didn't use Bristol Smooth for the ink blending, I used my AC, my Accent 100 pound paper. It came out a little splotchy up on top, but that's okay because most of it's going to be covered up. And I'm using my little, I believe it's Pond Life stencil. Another Rabbit Hole Designs product. If it's still available, I'll link it below. To draw and color in my cattails and some dragonflies and a little fly. I turned them into a fly, not a bee. I don't know why. But it could be a bee as well. And then I did their little trails with a glitter gel pen and also their wings. And that's how that looks there. Now I used the zigs for the cattails. Did I? Alright, you guys will have to refresh my memory when you see this, because there's ink blending on another card as well, and one of them I used ink and one of them I used zigs. I believe I used zigs on this one. And then the water touching the sky just didn't look right to me, so I put a little bit of brown ink in there to make a little bit of dirt, like land, and that turned out well. And now I'm using a piece of, I believe it's Palm Tree Pearlescent cardstock by Tonic, and I cut the insides out with dies so I wouldn't waste it, and that's going to be our frame, or our mat for our card panel. And I put some tape down there, but I'm going to add glue in between the taped pieces, just to make sure it doesn't pop off of the card base, which is a white 4x8.5 card base. Now I'm going to take an extra piece of that Palm Tree Pearlescent cardstock, and we're going to ink up the same sentiment, "You're a good catch," 3 times. I didn't know if I wanted it in white or brown, okay? So I stamped it in white first, and then I stamped it in what I thought was brown, but it was actually jet black from Nuvo. So I had to stamp it a 3rd time in Hot Cocoa Brown, also by Nuvo. So there's the 3. And I end up using, I believe, all 3 of them. I can't remember. At least 2 of them. So I cut out the word Dad from the Nicole Upper and Lower Alpha dies. And I gave them kind of a drop shadow with the glittered Tonic cardstock and then the Palm Tree cardstock over that. And now we're going to use the T-square ruler to make sure those are nice and straight up at the top left of the card. And see what I mean? A lot of the sky is covered up at this point with the cattails and the word Dad and then the rubber ducky, which, by the way, I love the blue rubber ducky. I think he looks super cute. And then I put "You're a good catch" on the inside. And I believe that is the black one, the one with the black embossing powder. On to the 3rd and 4th cards. I forgot there were 4 cards in this video, not 3. Okay, so originally these 3 were going to go together, and that's why their colors are similar, like go well together. But it was decided that they were going to be separated. So first we're going to do a Slimline Shaker, and we're going to do the same type of thing here that we did with the pond on the previous card, except I did not ink blend the entire background first. I just did the waves, and I'm using, I think this is the Light Me Up stencil. Once again, if it's still available, I'll put it down below, by Rabbit Hole Designs. And I'm using the same colors, except for the lightest color, Wintergreen. I did not use that one this time around. And this is going to be our background of our shaker. So after I go in with the Bay Breeze, we are going to, I forgot. You guys noticed that the little circle I cut out of the Slimline, that was a die by Heffy Doodle, and that's going to be where the shaker is on this card. I pulled out the Flower Whale stamp set, and I'm using the fish, the little school of fish, and the plants that came in that stamp set. Not the flowers, just the leafy branches, so we can have some plant life down at the bottom of our pond. And then I put some school of fish at the top, and I colored those over the ink with Copics, just simple blues and greens. And yeah, I'm not going to show that. Like I said, no coloring today, guys. So that's that panel all finished. Now we're going to put a piece of acetate behind that circle there. I always use glue for that because I'm never sure if tape is going to make the acetate stick permanently. Now I'm going to, while that's drying, I'm going to work on the 4th card. I drew out a trace of a rectangle die here that's smaller than A2. I'd have to measure it. I will if I remember and put it on the screen for you, but it's from the Wonky Stitch rectangle dies from Simon Says Stamp. And now I'm just going in with Cummerbund and the over clouds in my coffee stencil. 2 puts of clouds in there, and then did the same thing with the pond water. And now I'm going to use that rectangle to die cut our little scene out. And now I picked a piece of cardstock. I believe this is Concord and 9th cardstock, 80 pound. And I used the same type of die, just a larger rectangle. Put it on a fog grade card base. Now, this card base was actually scored in the wrong spot when I was making card bases, so I just made that. I rescored it in the correct spot, folded, went over it with my bone folder, covered up the mistake score line with that piece of teal paper. Then I popped up that scene on foam tape, and I also popped up another hat and worm bucket on foam tape and added those to my rubber ducky. Ooh, it's windy today, guys. And he's going to be a wobbler. The only problem with this wobbler is because of the paper I used to color my rubber ducky, his fishing line and pole is not as sturdy as I would like, so it gets stuck behind the popped up panel sometimes. So my solution would be use sturdier paper, cardstock to color your image on, or don't pop your panel up, because it got stuck every time I tried to wobble it. Those are the ink colors I used by Concord and 9th, and one by My Favorite Things, which was the Vintage Timber, to create my cat tails on this slimline card. And I figured I'd save you the trouble of seeing me ink blend all those. And now I'm using a piece of cardstock that I die cut with my slimline hills from my stash. And I started going with over coffee, but it wasn't dark enough. So I end up going in after adding this other piece of die cut hill cardstock. I end up going in with icing on the cake to make it darker. And as you can see, my little dirt hill slopes so it doesn't interfere with the shaker card portion. And I actually heat dried that with my heat tool and then went over it again with the brown ink to make it even darker. Went in once again with my Fiesta Blue and Cummerbund ink by Catherine Pooler and made some clouds. And now we're just going to glue our two rubber duckies onto the hill. Now I'm just seeing where I want that panel, the background, to go, so I can trace a line around that and glue it in place. Now I do use You're a Good Catch on this panel as well. And I believe the third one got used inside of that wobbler card, but I cannot be sure, I can't remember. Now I have my sparkler shaker bits here, sparkly shaker bits, and some clear seed beads. I'm pouring those in the center. Now the downside to doing my card like this is that normally you have the double height foam tape to hold your pieces in place, but because I wasn't using a backer, it was going directly on the card base, I couldn't do that because I didn't want to screw it up and have foam tape showing, so I managed. It just took me a little bit longer to add those shaker bits so they wouldn't roll all over. So that's it for today's video, guys. I hope you like the 4 cards I have here for inspiration for the rubber ducky today. Don't forget to sign up for the Rabbit Hole Designs email, and don't forget to look for us on Instagram and Facebook and see the daily inspiration from the design team. And we'll see you next time. Bye bye for now.